The Tournament of Ascendants had existed for 17,000 cycles, and in all that time not a single being had dared to laugh during the opening ceremony. Until today. I was there, standing among the crystalline towers of the amphitheater of eternal judgments, my 4 sensory stalks fully extended in respectful attention, when the human walked in. The creature was impossibly small compared to the other contestants, where the mighty Korthax stood at 4 meters of pure scaled muscle. This human barely reached half that height, where the plasma born of Nexus Prime radiated waves of contained stellar energy. This human wore fabric, simple woven fabric in shades of gray and blue, and the human was grinning. "Oh wow," the creature said, its voice carrying across the sacred amphitheater with zero regard for protocol. "This is like if Vegas and Mount Olympus had a baby. Seriously impressive stuff." Silence crashed down like a collapsing star. 300 warriors, champions, demigods, and ascended beings turned their attention toward the source of this unprecedented disrespect. The air itself seemed to freeze. Elder Vrexus, coordinator of the tournament, and a being who had witnessed the birth of 6 different galaxies, extended one massive tentacle toward the human. His voice resonated through dimensions we lesser beings could barely perceive. "You dare mock the sacred halls of the tournament?" The human looked up at Vregas with those strange, forward-facing eyes. Predator eyes, I realized with a cold shock of recognition. Then the creature smiled wider. "Mock? No way. I'm genuinely impressed. The architecture alone must have taken centuries. Those support columns are using gravitational binding at the molecular level, right? Beautiful work." The human paused, tilting its head. "Though I gotta ask, who's responsible for the dramatic lighting? Because the whole shadows and golden glow thing is a bit much, don't you think?" A ripple of outrage spread through the assembled champions. The Korthax warrior, a creature named Threx, who had conquered 47 worlds through single combat, took 3 thundering steps toward the human. "You mock us further with your casual speech. Softskin. I have crushed mountains beneath my feet. I have bathed in the cores of dying suns. What are you to stand among us?" The human looked up at Threx, and I swear by my ancestors' spawning pools. The creature actually looked bored. "Name's Marcus Webb, mechanical engineer from Earth. And before you ask, yeah, I know I don't look like much." He gestured at himself with one thin limb. "But I did read the rules, and there was nothing about a height requirement, so..." He shrugged. A peculiar human gesture I had learned meant casual dismissal. Here I am. This was insanity. This was suicide. This was the most entertaining thing I had witnessed in 3 centuries. "You see, I should explain my position here. My name is Quilneth of the Observing Caste, and my role is to document the tournament for the Archives of Achievement. I have recorded 143 tournaments. I have seen champions fall, gods humbled, and legends born. But never, in all those cycles, had I seen someone treat the event like a curious academic exercise." Elder Vrexus seemed to consider vaporizing the human on the spot. His tentacles writhed with barely contained power. Then, surprisingly, he receded. "Very well, Marcus Webb, of Earth. You have registered according to the ancient protocols. You have passed through the gateway of initiation. You have claimed your right to compete." His vast consciousness pressed down on all of us like a physical weight. "But understand this. The Tournament of Ascendants is not a game. Champions die here. Gods fall here. Reality itself bends to the will of the victorious." Marcus nodded slowly. "Yeah, I read the waiver. Super thorough, by the way. Your legal team really covered all the bases." "Legal team?" The human thought the sacred oaths of binding were legal documents. I had to press my manipulator appendages against my vocalization sacs to prevent an inappropriate sound of amusement from escaping. The opening ceremony continued, though the atmosphere had shifted, where, before there had been solemn reverence, now there was electric tension. Every being in that amphitheater was watching the human, trying to understand what kind of creature would mock the gods themselves. The first round pairings were announced. Traditional combat 1 versus 1, until only the strongest remained. The rules were simple and brutal. Fight until your opponent cannot continue. Death was common. Surrender was permitted but rare. Victory meant advancement. Defeat meant shame eternal. Marcus Webb was matched against Serathis, a being composed of living flame who had burned entire civilizations to ash for the glory of her people. When the pairing was announced, Serathis laughed. A sound like a forest fire consuming dry wood. I will enjoy adding your ashes to my collection, little mammal. Marcus just nodded, looking forward to it. The matches would begin at dawn cycle, which gave us one rotation to prepare. Most champions retreated to meditation chambers or training facilities. The human wandered off toward the observation deck, pulling out a small rectangular device and pointing it at various structural elements of the amphitheater. I followed, because documenting unusual behavior was literally my job, and also because I was desperately curious about what manner of creature this was. You are going to die tomorrow, I said, approaching the human carefully. You understand this, yes? Marcus looked up from his device, seeming unsurprised by my presence. You're one of the observers, right? The documentation specialist. I am Quilneth, and you have not answered my question. Might die tomorrow, Marcus corrected, tucking the device into his fabric covering. Not definitely. There's a difference. Serathis has killed 400 opponents in various competitions. She has never lost a sanctioned combat. Her flames burn at temperatures exceeding most stellar atmospheres. I gestured with two of my limbs toward the human's fragile-looking body. You have fabric. I have more than fabric. Walbers tapped his head. I've got about 1,500 grams of the most sophisticated information processing system in known space, capable of abstract reasoning, pattern recognition, and creative problem-solving at speeds that would make your quantum computers jealous. You believe your brain makes you special? No, I believe my brain makes me human. And humans, he paused, looking out over the vast amphitheater, over the assembled champions preparing for glory and death. Humans have this annoying habit of surviving things we really shouldn't. We're persistence hunters, you know? We don't give up. Ever. They had studied human biology as part of my preparation for documenting their first appearance in the tournament. Humans were indeed persistence hunters, evolved to literally run their prey into exhaustion over distances that would kill most other predators. But this was not a marathon. This was a battle against living fire. Your persistence will not matter when you are reduced to carbon, I said, perhaps more bluntly than necessary. Marcus smiled that strange smile again. We'll see. The dawn cycle arrived with its customary spectacle. The amphitheater filled with spectators from 1,000 worlds, beings of pure energy, ancient machines, and everything in between. The first matches were scheduled to begin, and the anticipation was suffocating. I took my position in the documenter's sphere, a transparent observation bubble that could move freely through the combat space while remaining intangible. From here, I would record every moment for the archives. The first 3 matches were exactly as expected: brutal, spectacular, final. A warrior made of living metal crushed his opponent into paste within seconds. A psychic duelist unraveled her adversary's mind until nothing remained but gibbering madness. A gravity manipulator turned her opponent inside out without even moving. Then came the 4th match. Serathis entered the combat circle in her full glory, flames dancing along every surface of her form, heat distorting the air around her. The audience roared approval. She was a favorite, a proven champion, a being of pure destructive power. Marcus Webb walked in from the opposite side wearing the same casual fabric, hands in his pockets, looking for all the world like he was about to attend a social gathering rather than fight for his life. The match coordinator, a neutral entity of pure logic, spoke the words that had opened 10,000 battles. Keepers, prepare yourselves. Victory through strength, honor through combat, glory eternal to the triumphant. Serathis raised her arms, and the flames surrounding her intensified until I had to adjust my visual filters. The heat was incredible, washing over the protective barriers in waves that made reality itself shimmer. Your death will be quick, human. I grant you that mercy. Marcus finally took his hands out of his pockets.
I appreciate that, but I have a counter-proposal.
Then, before anyone could process what was happening, the human moved. Not toward Serathis, not away from her, sideways, at an angle. He pulled something from his fabric coverings, a device I didn't recognize, and threw it directly into the center of the combat circle. The device hit the ground and exploded into a cloud of white powder that expanded with shocking speed, filling the entire space within seconds. What is this? Serathis roared, her flames burning through the cloud. Tricks, deception, you shame yourself. It's not a trick, Marcus called out from somewhere in the white haze. It's baking soda, sodium bicarbonate, non-toxic, completely legal under tournament rules, and excellent for fire suppression. I watched, fascinated, as Serathis' flames began to dim, not extinguish, but definitely weaken. The chemical compound was absorbing heat and releasing carbon dioxide, creating a feedback loop that was actively reducing the temperature. But Serathis was far from defeated. Halsey condensed her form, concentrating her power, and launched herself toward the sound of Marcus's voice, like a missile of pure fire. The human wasn't there anymore. He had moved again, circling around the perimeter of the combat space with surprising speed. Those persistence hunter muscles, I realized, weren't just for marathons. You know what's funny about fire? Marcus called out, his voice coming from a different direction. It needs 3 things: heat, fuel, and oxygen. Remove any one of those, and it goes out. He threw 3 more devices into the cloud. These ones didn't explode into powder. They hissed, releasing clouds of dense vapor that mixed with the baking soda, creating a thick fog that even Serathis' flames struggled to penetrate. You cannot hide forever, Serathis screamed, frustration evident in her voice. Face me with honor. Honor? Marcus's voice had changed, hardened. You've killed 400 beings. You've burned civilizations. You've literally turned living creatures into ash for sport. And you want to talk to me about honor? Another device flew through the fog. This one attached to Serathis' form, and began emitting a high-pitched whine. That's a resonance disruptor, Marcus explained, his voice calm now, almost clinical, tuned specifically to the frequency of ionized plasma. Your body type, if I'm reading the spectral analysis correctly, it won't kill you, but it's going to be really, really uncomfortable. Serathis howled, a sound of pure rage and pain. Her flames flickered wildly as the device interfered with the very structure of her being. How? She demanded, her form destabilizing. How does a soft-skinned creature have such technology? Because I'm an engineer, Marcus replied, finally stepping into view through the thinning fog. And engineers solve problems. Your problem is that you're fire. My problem was how to beat fire. So I spent 6 months studying every recorded match you've ever fought, analyzing your combustion patterns, calculating your thermal output, and designing countermeasures. He walked closer, and I could see now that his fabric covering was lined with reflective material, probably to deflect heat. Smart, simple, effective. You want to know the real difference between you and me? Marcus stopped just outside Serathis' weakening flames. You're powerful. I'm clever. And in the long run, clever beats powerful every single time. Serathis tried to surge forward, to immolate this impudent creature with one final burst of heat. But the resonance disruptor, the chemical suppressants, the reduced oxygen, all of it combined to render her attack weak, almost pathetic. Marcus didn't even move. He just stood there, waiting. Finally, inevitably, Serathis collapsed. Not dead. The rules didn't require death, but defeated, utterly, completely, humiliatingly defeated. The match coordinator's voice echoed through the stunned silence. Victor Marcus Webb of Earth. The amphitheater exploded into chaos.
Spectators were screaming, cheering, arguing.
Champions were on their feet, demanding to know how this was possible. Elder Vrexus himself had extended all his sensory tentacles, studying the human with an intensity that made reality bend around him. And Marcus Webb just stood there in the center of the combat circle, surrounded by dissipating fog and chemical residue, looking tired but satisfied. He caught my eye from where I hovered in my documentation sphere and gave me that smile again, that infuriating, confident, completely human smile. Told you, he mouthed. Persistence. I had documented 143 tournaments. I had seen miracles and impossibilities. I had witnessed the fall of champions and the rise of legends. But this was something new. This was a human showing 300 of the most powerful beings in the galaxy that power wasn't everything. That intelligence, preparation, and sheer stubborn refusal to accept defeat could overcome seemingly impossible odds. And this was only the first round. I found myself doing something I had never done in all my cycles as a documenter. I found myself excited to see what happened next. Because if Marcus Webb could defeat Serathis, what else was he capable of? What other impossibilities would this strange, small, fabric-wearing creature accomplish? The tournament had been running for 17,000 cycles, following the same patterns, the same types of victories, the same displays of raw power. Marcus Webb had just changed the rules. And no one, not the champions, not the observers, Not even the gods themselves had any idea what that meant for the rounds to come. The human walked out of the combat circle, hands back in his pockets, humming something under his breath. A tune, a melody, something completely inappropriate for the most sacred competition in known space. And somehow that was the most unsettling thing of all. The victory of Marcus Webb over Sarah. This sent shockwaves through the tournament that lasted well into the rest cycle. I spent the next several hours documenting the reactions, which ranged from outrage to disbelief to something approaching fear. Fear of a human. A creature that stood barely 2 meters tall and massed less than most beings' primary appendages. The second round pairings were announced during the evening meditation period, and the atmosphere in the amphitheater had fundamentally shifted. Where before the champions had treated the tournament with reverence and confidence, now there was uncertainty, calculation. Every warrior who had dismissed the human as a curiosity was now reassessing. Marcus had drawn Korthax the Voidbreaker for his second match. I found the human in one of the preparation alcoves, surrounded by various devices and tools spread across a workbench. He was manipulating something with those peculiar 5-fingered hands, attaching wires to a small metallic cube. "You understand what you face tomorrow?" I asked, settling my observation sphere near his workspace. Marcus didn't look up from his work. Korthax, 7 feet of angry reptilian warrior, telekinetic abilities strong enough to crush starship hulls, reaction time roughly 4 times faster than human baseline, defeated his last 12 opponents without physical contact. He glanced at me briefly. "Yeah, I did my homework." "Then you know he will kill you. Your chemical tricks will not work against pure mental force." "Probably not," Marcus agreed. Attaching another wire. I observed the device taking shape under his hands. It appeared to be a modified quantum processor connected to several energy cells and what looked like a localized field generator. "What is that?" "Insurance policy." Marcus held up the cube, examining it from multiple angles. "Korthax's telekinesis operates by manipulating quantum probability fields at a distance. Right. He basically convinces reality that objects should be somewhere other than where they are. That is, a crude but essentially accurate description. So what happens if you flood an area with quantum uncertainty?
Hey!
Make it so noisy that reality can't decide which probability to collapse into?
He set the cube down gently. You get chaos.
Beautiful, unpredictable chaos that even a powerful telekinetic can't fully control. I processed this for several moments. You are going to fight a god-tier mental warrior by making reality confused? Basically, yeah. Marcus finally looked at me fully and I saw something in those predator eyes I hadn't noticed before. Exhaustion. Deep, bone-level fatigue. Look, Quilneth, I know what everyone thinks.
Humans are weak.
We're slow, fragile, short-lived. We don't have natural armor or energy projection or psychic powers, but you know what we do have? Your brain, I said, recalling our earlier conversation. Our brain, and about 3 million years of evolution teaching us one critical survival skill. He leaned back against the workbench. We cheat. We use tools. We change the environment to suit us instead of adapting to it. Every other species in the galaxy got stronger or faster, or developed natural weapons. We got sneaky. This is not a quality celebrated in the Tournament of Ascendants. Marcus laughed, a short, sharp sound. Yeah, I'm getting that impression. But here's the thing about rules and traditions and sacred competitions. They're designed by the winners to keep themselves winning. The moment someone from outside the system shows up and plays differently, the whole structure gets tested. You believe you can win the entire tournament? The human was quiet for a long moment, his fingers absently adjusting one of the connections on his device. When he spoke, his voice was softer, more thoughtful. Honestly, I don't know. Maybe. Maybe not. But I'm going to try. Because that's what humans do. We see impossible odds. And we try anyway. We fail constantly. Spectacularly. But we keep getting back up. He met my gaze again. And sometimes, just sometimes, we succeed in ways that change everything. I left him to his preparations, my consciousness churning with questions that had no easy answers. What was this creature really? What drove him to challenge beings so far beyond his natural capabilities? The dawn cycle came too quickly. Korthax entered the combat circle like a storm made flesh. He was massive, scaled, with eyes that glowed with barely contained power. His presence distorted the air around him, reality itself bending to his will. Marcus walked in carrying nothing but his small quantum device, still wearing that ridiculous fabric covering. The crowd was 3 times larger than the previous day. Word had spread across multiple systems about the human who defeated Serathis. Now beings from dimensions I couldn't even perceive properly had gathered to watch. Elder Vrexus himself spoke the opening words this time, his vast consciousness pressing down on all of us. The tournament continues. Power meets cunning. Ancient strength faces novel strategy. Let the combat begin. Korthax didn't waste time with words. The moment the authorization was given, he reached out with his mind and seized Marcus, lifting the human 10 meters into the air with invisible force. Your tricks end here, mammal, Korthax rumbled. There is no defense against pure will. Then he began to squeeze. I watched in horror as the telekinetic pressure surrounded Marcus, compressing inward like a closing fist. The human's face contorted in pain, his body straining against forces that should have crushed him instantly. But Marcus still had his thumb on the activation button of his device. He pressed it. Reality hiccuped. That's the only way I can describe it. Audiobook. The quantum uncertainty generator activated, and suddenly the space around Marcus became a probability nightmare. Korthax's telekinetic grip remained, but now it was trying to hold something that existed in multiple states simultaneously. Marcus was there and not there, solid and intangible, falling and floating all at once. Korthax roared in frustration, increasing his mental pressure. But the more force he applied, the more unstable the quantum field became, creating feedback loops that disrupted his concentration. Marcus managed to gasp out words through the conflicting forces. Funny thing about certainty, it only works when reality is paying attention. The human twisted, or maybe reality twisted around him, and suddenly he was falling instead of floating. Korthax tried to catch him again, but the quantum interference made it like trying to grab smoke. Marcus hit the ground hard, rolled, and came up running. You cannot escape, Korthax bellowed, hurling chunks of the arena floor at the human with his mind. But the projectiles passed through spaces where Marcus had been a fraction of a second earlier, or suddenly lost momentum as they entered zones of quantum uncertainty, or simply changed direction at random as probability stopped making sense. Marcus was moving in a pattern. I realized, not randomly. He was circling Korthax, staying just outside the most intense areas of telekinetic force, using the quantum interference to create pockets of protection. And he was talking, constantly talking, which I was beginning to understand was part of his strategy. You know what the problem is with power like yours? It requires focus, concentration, a stable understanding of cause and effect. Marcus dove behind a pillar as Korthax tore another section of arena loose. But human brains, we evolved to handle uncertainty. We thrive in chaos. It's literally what we do best. He threw something small and fast. Korthax's reflexes caught it telekinetically, stopping it mid-air. Then the object exploded into dozens of smaller objects, each one emitting its own quantum field. The entire combat space became a nightmare of conflicting probabilities. Korthax was powerful, perhaps the most powerful telekinetic I had ever documented, but his power depended on his ability to accurately perceive and manipulate reality. Now reality was having an argument with itself about what was real, and Korthax's certainty was becoming his weakness. Impossible, he roared, lashing out with waves of pure force that scattered randomly through the unstable field. You are nothing. Weak. Fragile. Yeah, you're right, Marcus called back, breathing hard now, clearly exhausted. Sure, I am weak. I am fragile. One good hit from you, and I'm done. But you know what else I am? He triggered another device, adding more quantum static to the already chaotic environment. I'm really annoying to kill. Korthax was losing his composure, something I had never seen in all my years documenting the tournament. Champions didn't lose composure. They won, or they died, but they remained controlled. But this human, this impossible creature was making one of the tournament's most feared warriors absolutely furious. And fury, as it turned out, was the enemy of precision. Korthax gathered his power for one massive, overwhelming attack. He pulled energy from the very structure of the amphitheater, drew on reserves of strength that made the air itself scream. He focused everything into a single point, determined to crush the human regardless of quantum uncertainty or clever tricks. It was exactly what Marcus had been waiting for. The moment Korthax committed all his concentration to that one attack, Marcus activated his final device. Not a quantum disruptor this time. Something simpler. A recording, audio only, playing at maximum volume through the arena's acoustic system. It was screaming. Dozens of different voices, human voices, all screaming in terror and pain and fury, not real screams. Marcus told me later. Digital recordings he had synthesized, but realistic enough. The sound hit Korthax's enhanced senses like a physical blow. His concentration shattered. The massive telekinetic attack he had been building dispersed explosively, the unfocused energy tearing through the combat space in random directions. One of those random bursts hit Korthax himself, throwing him backward into the arena wall with bone-breaking force. The quantum fields collapsed. Reality snapped back to normal. Marcus stood in the center of the combat circle, covered in dust and minor injuries, barely able to remain upright. Korthax lay against the wall, conscious but clearly unable to continue. Silence. Perfect. Crystalline silence. Then the match coordinator spoke. Victor, Marcus Webb, of Earth. This time the reaction was different. No outrage, no demands for explanations, just stunned. Absolute silence as 300 of the most powerful beings in known space tried to process what they had just witnessed. A human had defeated a telekinetic demigod using noise and quantum physics. I found Marcus afterward in the medical facility getting his ribs checked by a healing specialist who seemed deeply uncomfortable treating something so alien as a human. "You cheated again," I said, without preamble. Marcus winced as the healer's energy probe examined his chest. Hulge used available technology within the established rules. "That's not cheating. That's engineering. You made him destroy himself with his own attack." "Yeah, that was the plan. Korthax is way more powerful than me. Direct confrontation would be suicide. So I had to make him more dangerous to himself than I was." He grunted in pain as the healer found a cracked rib. "Basic principle of asymmetric warfare." "Warfare," I repeated. "You view the tournament as a war?" "I view everything as a system that can be analyzed, understood, and exploited. War, tournaments, economics, relationships. Humans are pattern recognition machines. We see the rules and then we figure out how to win while technically following those rules." The healer finished and departed hastily, clearly eager to be away from this disturbing creature. I moved closer to Marcus's recovery pod. "Always. There are 8 rounds remaining. Champions far more powerful than Korthax. Beings who have transcended physical form entirely. Ancient entities that predate starlight itself. You cannot engineer your way past all of them." Marcus was quiet for a long time, staring at the ceiling of the medical facility. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. "My daughter is sick, terminal genetic disorder. The medical technology to cure her doesn't exist yet on Earth, but it exists here, in the wider galaxy." He turned his head to look at me. "The prize for winning the tournament includes access to any technology in the archive of Ascendants, right?" "Yes, but no buts. That's why I'm here. Not for glory or honor or to prove humans are special. I'm here because my 8-year-old daughter is dying and this is the only way I can save her." His voice hardened. "So yeah, I'm going to engineer my way past every single one of them, because the alternative is watching my kid die and that's not acceptable." Everything suddenly made sense. The preparation, the ruthless efficiency, the complete lack of concern for tradition or protocol. This wasn't about the tournament at all. This was a father fighting for his child. "You could have simply requested the technology," I said quietly. "Applied through diplomatic channels." Marcus laughed bitterly.
I did.
17 different times. You know what I got? Responses ranging from humanity is too primitive to such technology would disrupt your natural developments to just being ignored completely. He sat up slowly, wincing. "So I found another way. The tournament is open to any being who can pass through the gateway of initiation. No species restrictions, no power requirements, just the willingness to compete. And you walk through that gateway knowing you would likely die. Better than doing nothing while my daughter dies for certain." I had no response to that.
What could I say?
That his love for his offspring was admirable but futile. That the tournament would crush him eventually. That some prices were too high to pay. All of those things were probably true, and none of them mattered. The 3rd round came and went. Marcus faced a being of pure plasma, who could phase through solid matter. The human won using electromagnetic containment fields and a thorough understanding of ionization dynamics. The fourth round brought a warrior species that could regenerate from any physical damage. Marcus won by triggering a controlled environment collapse that put his opponent into hibernation mode. The fifth round, sixth, seventh. Each match was different. Each victory seemed impossible until Marcus made it inevitable. He never fought fair. He never fought with honor. He fought to win, using every advantage his human brain could conceive. And the galaxy watched. Beings from 1,000 worlds tuned in to watch the human who shouldn't be winning somehow continue to survive. Analysts debated his strategies. Scientists studied his techniques. Military commanders took notes. But I understood what others didn't. Marcus Webb wasn't remarkable because he was strong or powerful or blessed by gods. He was remarkable because he represented something the tournament had forgotten. Desperation. Every other champion fought for glory, honor, or personal advancement. They had all chosen to be there. Marcus was there because he had no choice, and that made him more dangerous than any of them. The eighth round arrived, and Marcus faced Elder Thexus, a being of pure thought who existed across multiple dimensions simultaneously. The match lasted 6 hours. Reality itself bent and twisted. Quantum probability stopped making sense. Time flowed backward and forward at random intervals. In the end, Marcus won by making Elder Thexus laugh. I'm serious. The human constructed an argument so logically absurd, so philosophically ridiculous, so fundamentally contradictory that the ancient entity's computational consciousness encountered a paradox it couldn't resolve. Elder Thexus laughed, the first time in recorded history, and conceded the match out of sheer appreciation for the creativity. The ninth round was against a living singularity. Marcus shouldn't have survived. The gravitational forces alone should have torn him apart at the atomic level. He won using a trick involving quantum entanglement and a very precisely timed distraction. I'm still not entirely sure how it worked. Which brought us to the final round, the championship. Marcus Webb versus the current tournament holder, an entity known only as the Eternal, a being so ancient and powerful that most species worshipped it as a deity. The final match was scheduled for the Grand Arena, capable of holding 5 million spectators from across dimensional space. Every major civilization sent representatives. The media coverage was unprecedented. And in a small preparation chamber, Marcus Webb sat quietly, looking at a holographic image of a young human child. His daughter, dark hair, bright eyes, wearing a smile that didn't quite hide her pain. "You will lose," I said, because someone needed to say it. The Eternal has never been defeated. It has powers beyond comprehension. It has existed since before your species evolved. Probably, Marcus agreed, still looking at the hologram. But there's a chance, a small one, and a small chance is better than no chance. Is winning worth dying for? Marcus finally looked up at me, and in his eyes I saw something that I think defined humanity better than any scientific analysis or cultural study ever could. She's my daughter. So yeah, it is. The final match began at the nexus point between 3 dimensions, in a space that existed everywhere and nowhere simultaneously. The Eternal manifested as a presence that hurt to perceive directly, a consciousness so vast it made galaxies seem like minor details. Marcus Webb stood before it wearing his simple fabric covering and carrying a single small device. The Eternal spoke, and its voice was the sound of universes being born. "You have impressed us, small human. You have fought with cunning where others relied on strength. You have survived where all logic suggested death. We offer you this. Concede now, and we will grant your request regardless. Your offspring will receive the healing she requires." I saw Marcus's face, saw the hope, the overwhelming relief, the temptation to accept, to end this impossible quest with victory. Then I saw that hope harden into something else, something fierce. No. The word echoed across dimensions. "You would refuse mercy? It's not mercy if it comes from surrendering. My daughter doesn't need me to be smart enough to know when I'm beaten. She needs me to be stubborn enough to never quit." Marcus activated his device. "Besides, I've got one more trick to show you." What happened next is difficult to describe. Marcus's device didn't attack the Eternal, didn't try to disrupt or contain or confuse it. Instead, it sent out a message, a broadcast across quantum communication channels to every connected system in the galaxy. A message that contained detailed documentation of every match Marcus had fought, every strategy he had used, every impossible victory he had achieved. And it asked a simple question: if a human with no powers can make it this far, what could your species do? The effect was instantaneous. Billions of beings across thousands of worlds suddenly saw the tournament not as an unreachable competition for demigods, but as something potentially achievable through intelligence and preparation. Applications flooded in, thousands of new species registering for the next tournament, scientists demanding access to study Marcus's techniques, military organizations wanting to learn his tactical approaches. The Tournament of Ascendants, which had been an exclusive proving ground for the powerful, suddenly became something else. A goal, an inspiration, a challenge that intelligence could overcome. The Eternal was silent for a long moment. Clever human, you have not defeated us, but you have changed what we represent. For that alone, the vast presence shifted, and reality reconfigured around us. We concede this tournament to you, not for your strength, but for showing us that strength alone is not worthy of celebration. Marcus Webb collapsed to his knees, exhausted beyond measure. So I win. You win. The human started laughing, crying.
Both at once. I'm going home. I'm saving my daughter. I actually did it.
You did, I said, moving my observation sphere close. Though I suspect you've done more than save one life. You've changed the tournament itself, changed what it means to be powerful. Marcus looked up at me, tears streaming down his face, grinning that impossible human grin. Good. About time somebody did. The aftermath was chaos, but organized chaos. Marcus received his prize, including complete access to medical technologies that would save his daughter. But more than that, he received something else. Recognition. Humanity was suddenly on the galactic stage, not as primitives to be ignored or protected, but as a species that had proven themselves through the oldest test of all, impossible odds and stubborn refusal to quit. I completed my documentation of the tournament 17,344, the tournament where everything changed, where a father's love proved stronger than godlike power, where engineering defeated magic, where one small human redefined what it meant to be powerful. Months later, I received a message from Earth. A simple video file showing Marcus Webb and his daughter, now healthy and laughing, playing in what humans call a park. The message had only 2 words attached. Thank you. I didn't save his daughter. I didn't help him win. I just documented what happened. But perhaps that was help enough. Perhaps bearing witness to impossible things, recording them for future generations, was its own form of power. The Tournament of Ascendants continues. The fights go on. Champions still compete for glory. But now they do so knowing that raw power isn't everything. That intelligence, preparation, and sheer stubborn refusal to accept defeat can overcome seemingly impossible odds. They compete knowing that somewhere out there is a species of small, fragile, fabric-wearing creatures who don't have natural weapons or armor, or psychic abilities. But who have something potentially more dangerous, the absolute refusal to let impossible odds stop them from protecting the ones they love. Humans entered the tournament of the gods and redefined power forever, not through strength, but through the simple, stubborn determination that has always been their greatest weapon. And the galaxy will never be quite the same again.